Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just real quick, do I have everybody's consent to publish this recording for all to see?
Yes.
Yes, you may.
Okay, sweet. All right. So since this is the first one that we're actually gonna like post anywhere, does everyone should we who wants to like introduce the group, and I guess we should also do individual introductions.
Um,
Squiddo.
I don't want to do it.
Okay. Alright, do you want to do it?
so this group, we are part of the steering committee for leaderboards.gg. This is mainly a high-level decision-making group of non-technical individuals who have some kind of background in video game leaderboard management
Perfect.
or administration.
Awesome.
I am Auride. I am a mod for Okami on speedrun.com, which is my main reason for getting interested in this. And mostly I'm just a contributor to the steering committee. I haven't contributed any code to this project.
Squidward.
I am Squid. Um,
Squiddo, sorry.
I yeah, Squiddo. It's okay. I don't really use my name anywhere, so I'm incog. Um, I am just a nerd. I enjoyed watching speed running, and decided that there was a hole that needed to be fixed, and that there was a place for a product that I didn't have the skills to do by myself, but I thought it would be a really good idea, if such a thing existed. And so I kind of just put it out into the universe and I said, hey, let's work on this thing. Um, I think that's it.
Great.
I've contributed code. I made the info site V whatever we're on now too. But I help in a non-programmer uh, way.
Yeah, so in case that wasn't clear, Squiddo is the founder of the entire project. And then I'll go next. I'm the Tedder, or just Tedder, either one's fine. I'm part of the steering committee. I guess my background is just speedrunner guy, and I've made a lot of tools for. I've either worked on directly or helped out with speedrunning tools in the past. I've been on, you know, involved in certain leaderboard administrative activities, mostly for the Harry Potter speedrunning community. But basically, just like, yeah, just general speedrunning guy. That's me. All right, and then what we're actually here to discuss today, or one thing that I wanted to discuss, we can talk about whatever we want. If we have if other stuff comes up, we can also adjust it. But the overall goal of the project of leaderboards.gg, I feel would. I've been saying this for a long time. And by the way, this is not our first meeting. We've been meeting for a few years now, on and off. This is just the first one that we're posting, so it's going to look like the first meeting unless we decide to go back and post the other meetings. But yeah, the reason I wanted to get on with everybody, and we're missing a few people, notably Habreno and Josh. They are sometimes here, and Temper Grace is also sometimes here. So we will consult them and we'll show them this recording. But yeah, it was kind of a short notice meeting, so we could only get 3 of us here today. But I wanted to discuss like the overall kind of goals and principles that we want to follow when making this project, because while I think the vague purpose, as in like what we're building, is pretty clear at this point for the technical people. They've got a lot of good guidance. We've spent a lot of time, done a lot of great work talking about like what to build and what to build first, and we've ironed that out. But as we near the end of that step where we're building our first kind of version, our MVP version, I wanted to clarify some things relating to like how the site's going to be run and like what's our like overall purpose for, not probably know what our purpose is, but what's our goal for how we want to run the site, like what are our principles going to be, like, because basically we've made a lot of the big decisions of like design, but we haven't made a lot of the like small decisions, and we were thinking we were maybe going to offload those to another team, like an admin or a staff team that kind of works on the day-to-day. But I want to set them up for success and set our users up for like a frustration-free experience by kind of coming up with some of the guidelines for how people are going to use the website and how that potential staff team is going to run the website. Because I think, and I'm pretty sure this aligns with everybody's idea of what the steering committee is, which is that we're not actually running the website on a day-to-day level.
Yeah, so the way I would describe it is that this project actually has a few different components or products that we hope to produce. One of which is an open source backend as well as a corresponding front end to basically build a leaderboards website for video games. This will include things like speedrunning as well as high scores and a couple other types. The idea would be to be fairly flexible and to have a lot of control over exactly how those leaderboards are laid out, as well as any other ways each individual submission is organized and what information is provided. In addition to that, we will very likely, I suspect, end up running our own instance of leaderboards.gg, or of this backend and front end, which will run under our own more opinionated baseline set of guidelines and rules and site-wide moderation.
Great, that was an excellent summary. So yeah, thank you for like laying that all out. That was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so what we're building is A, software, and B, also a user experience that are eventually going to be decoupled such that anyone can take our software and create their own website or service using it.
Exactly.
So yeah, what I want to talk about today is mostly on the website side of things, not the software side, because we've pretty much figured out where the software is going right now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're in a really good direction with that. I'm really happy with the work we've done on that. But in terms of, because the software is getting almost into a usable state, so once we start like appointing admins and people start submitting runs, what are going to be, and I can pull up some of the stuff we've maybe written down already.
Yeah, please do.
That would probably be a great place to start, because we haven't committed to a whole lot of stuff, but we have actually written quite a bit about potential ways that this could work. So I need to give me a moment to log into the U-Track, which I haven't actually pulled up in a very long time. So I'm going to actually just reiterate for people watching and so everyone remembers some of the things that I actually wrote in our little private discussion channel, which is that I feel that many of these projects, the kind of existing websites that are catered towards speedrunning or high score running or challenge running, they all kind of have slightly different goals, and that affects the way that the users use them and the way that the admins kind of set the rules. So basically, what I'm after right now, and I've gotten into the U-Track, is what are our goals, and what I mean by goals, it's kind of vague, is like taskvideos.org, I think. Yeah, it's .org. One of their explicit goals is these videos exist for entertainment. They're not really about competition. Like the taskers, yes, they try to beat each other's tasks, but it's also like kind of it's more of a collaborative thing, if anything. Like often the guy who beats your tasks is you, like, or you work on the task that beats your own task. Like it's a heavily collaborative kind of environment where the goal is to entertain the users, like the people viewing the tasks. So naturally their rules are much less about like strict competition and more about like how can we make an entertaining product and making entertaining movies. They're called movies. That tells you everything you need to know. And then whereas like other sites like Speed Demos Archive were like they had some of that goal originally, but they were a little bit also towards like, okay, who's the like you gotta one up the other person. Like they used to have a rule that like you needed to beat the record by a significant margin for it to even count, which seems like archaic nowadays, but it kind of made sense that if you don't, because there was always some kind of fuzziness and like load times and stuff. So if you didn't beat it by a clear margin, you weren't showing that you were clearly the better player. It had to be a significant improvement to even count. And that made sense, you know, with the culture at the time. And then, you know, speedrun.com comes along and their whole ethos is more like we're a service. You come in, you bring your own moderators, you bring your own runs, and you bring your own categories, and you just do what you want, which works great for like self-contained communities that kind of are all on the same page and have a tight-knit kind of ethos and vibe to them. But it, you know, has drawbacks when you get for a user who's maybe hopping between games or like maybe has some differences with how the sites are run. I mean, I know a lot of people get fed up with Speed Demos Archive, at least back in the day, because their rules felt very like arbitrary, and they admitted that the rules were arbitrary. Like they basically said, hey, this website is run by one guy and it's his website, so he gets to like he makes rules to produce runs that he wants to see. He doesn't think that like major glitch categories are interesting, so they're banned because they're not fun to him. And that works as long as you agree with that guy. But we we probably want to find some middle ground. Oops, sorry, I bumped the mic. So yeah, if I'm reading from the U track here, if I look, we have an article called Site Ethos that was like a huge. I think this is just a ramble basically for me, where I was like, I kind of wanted to create. We didn't commit to anything in this article, but basically I laid out like, okay, here's my idea of what something like this could like if we wanted to have a more structured approach to how we're going to set up the website. Because I think we talked a long time ago about like even just something as simple as how games are grouped on a leaderboard, whether like two similar games or re-releases of the same game grouped together or not, it's its own entire discussion that like takes days to just to figure out, and we can't even come up with clear guidelines. So like my idea was like, hey, and tell me if you guys kind of think this makes sense, which is that like in order to give our users the best and most consistent experience, we kind of work through all that stuff on the front end instead of each individual game, you know, having to do it over and over again from scratch.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I started by saying that our instance of this would be more opinionated is that we wanted to have a much more thorough set of top-level rules and almost meta rules about the kinds of rules that each leaderboard can and should have.
Yeah, and the idea being that the reason we're doing it this way is so that users get a consistent experience where they can hop from game to game. You know, some people run 50 different games and they don't want to have to like deal with the rules being different in each niche community, significantly different. They might vary a little bit because games are different, but also this is to relieve the burden from the moderators or admins of each game. So they don't have to try to figure out what each game community specifically wants. And which, by the way, the people who run a game can change significantly. You know, you could have like 20 active runners, and then 2 years later, none of them are still running the game, and there's a whole new group of people running the game with different ideas of how it should be run. I've kind of seen this happen. So the idea would be like we kind of have this temporally stable rule set that is like heavily well thought out in advance, and obviously it can change a little bit, but we kind of work through and we look at the examples of how things have been done in the past, like what problems it have like come up and how we can hopefully solve them. Like we do the work in advance so that when you apply to be like a moderator of a game, you don't have to generate yourself the entire rule set for the game and be subjected to like backlash and arguing and bickering.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the only other component that would be missing is that I think I talked earlier about how like the rules for your website, if you have a global rule set or just for any individual game, there's no one right way to do it. There's a million different ways you could do it, and the only way to choose is by deciding what you value. Right, because like I said, Task Videos values entertainment. Spearrun.com kind of tends to value. I feel like on that site, communities tend to value competition a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to any. There's more speedrunning websites than you think. There's the one for Monkey Ball. It's called SMB Elite. I've used that website a little bit, and that website has changed. It's slowly becoming more competitive. It was a little bit more flexible. That community had an influx of cheaters that kind of caused them to make their rules a bit more strict, but they also allow things like mods, like not mods that change the game, but like if you release a mod pack for the game, they'll put it on their website because they want to bring people together and like make this a place for anyone who runs the game or any of its mods to all be kind of centralized. So like stuff like that, where like my point is to say that I think we should upfront. Also, Squiddo, I don't know. I assume you muted intentionally. By the way, just want to double check.
Yeah, I absolutely did.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's not a sorry. It's just like I have friends who always accidentally hit the mute button and they don't realize for like
Uh
5 minutes. I just want to make sure we weren't missing anything from you.
no, no, yeah, I'm still here. I'm still listening. I'm very much here to kind of I don't know, like kind of like vibe check and make sure that everything is all kind of like still in line with everything. But I'm definitely more on the side of like this project existing and everything, and I'm not as hands on with like running day to day. Like I don't like I've stepped back a little bit from the hobby at this point, and so it's very much like a I heavily support this being what the users need. And so I'm just very much along for what y'all, the users, decide for things.
Cool. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if like a bunch of clones pop up right away, and then even some of the same people end up running the alternative websites. Like, I could see like, let's say ours focuses more on like being super competitive, and then one pops up that's more like let's say like I know people love randomizers and bingos and stuff these days. Like let's say a clone immediately pops up. I shouldn't say clone. Let's say another instance, and it's like okay, this is the randomizer leaderboard. I really wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the same people running like the primary instance or the one that's just happens to be run by the same organization end up also running other instances that have like completely different rule sets. So I kind of
Especially if they like the tool. Yeah. And they're just like, hey, I know how this works. I can easily turn this into something that I need for this. It also honestly works for things that aren't even video games. Like it's kind of cool that like the whole structure of this like little kit is going to allow a lot of different hobbies to like have an online kind of like leaderboard about things. It's very neat.
Agreed. I actually, I one time, this is a super quick 30-second tangent, but I worked for this guy who had me making a leaderboard for his paddle tennis league,
Mm.
and he had the software that like he built from scratch, and it was terrible, and I hated it. Uh, love the guy, love the job, but like the software itself was hard to use, and I was just thinking to myself like how much better it would have been if something like this existed that you could just plug into your existing system and kind of refactor to run off our code out of the box. It would be used for like speed cubing would probably be another great use for it, or anything where you're tracking leaderboards for like I don't know like who can eat the most hot dogs, literally anything.
Yeah, the primary goal of this project is focused on video games, but I'm sure that this could be fairly easily adapted to all sorts of other kinds of leaderboards.
That's the beauty of it. Also, like I've started seeing lately when I've been gaming, the game has its own kind of like leaderboard built into it. And I think having some sort of like endpoint for that, like it grows really well as well. Like the spec on this, like we've thought about it in a way that it's like, no, this is what makes sense, but it's also incredibly flexible.
Yeah. So I wrote a lot of text um, in the Discord about like why having this lack of direction on a website like speedrun.com has really hurt my user experience, and I don't want to summarize it all again. I could publish it with this if I need to. Um, TLDR, basically every time I would want to run a game, I would it would be like, okay, first you got to download our custom client, download this patch. Here's an auto hotkey script to help you nail this trick, uh, and like here's a custom timer software we had to write to track it, and it's just like before you can even start running a PC game these days, there's like 10 hoops you have to jump through, and some of them are often like questionable. Like, oh, and here, by the way, and here's a config edit that you have to do to like get a higher FOV, and then like, it's like install a mod, and it's like I would love, and if you complain about it, that like this is kind of cheating, or if you just say like, hey guys, doesn't this feel a little bit like sketchy? Then you get a guy like replying to you in the SRDC forums like, actually we voted about this 5 years ago, so it's settled law. I don't like. Has anyone else here had that experience?
In the community that I moderate in Okami, we have had a couple times when we've, after long discussions, decided to put a rule change to a poll, and I think it's pretty unsurprising that at least some of those times I've disagreed with the final result.
Yeah, I mean naturally that's gonna happen. I've experienced that too. I just like I guess I more meant like you want to run a game and then you realize that everyone who's running the game like you're new to the community and
Mm.
you look at the rule set and it's just absolutely what you would not consider valid for the point of speedrunning, for competition, or for whatever you're trying to get out of it. Or maybe like you could go in the other direction where it's like the rules are so restrictive that you can't, or like so competitive that it treats it like an actual like Olympic level sport and you can't even get into it. And it's more serious than you wanted to take it. How do we or rather I think it would be a great goal to have to try to find a middle ground, so to speak, where it's like for any given game you want to run, you can just boot it up and run it. pretty much, without like, here's a mod you have to install, here's a config edit that we all do, here's custom client we use to launch it, custom timer, like, because some of that stuff, what happens is it ends up feeling like you're not even playing the game like the default way anymore. I know, oh, also you have to download DX story to toggle the frame rate cap to get a glitch to happen, and it's like, at some point, it feels to me, oftentimes when I'm playing, it depends on the game. It feels like, why even bother at this point? Like, you've killed any competitive nature of the run, because you're doing so many things that I think are pretty much tantamount to cheating, or I would personally call cheating. But since the people making the rules are the people who run the game, they all just vote to allow it because it makes it easier to run or faster or whatever. And you can't complain about it, or else people say, like, A, first of all, you're new to the game, you don't get to make the decisions, like, we already made the decisions. And, B, we've been doing it this way for a long time, we're not going to change it just for you, To me, that's a huge pain point for speedrunning. That's why I quit, basically.
I guess one other way of looking at it is, the way things are currently done in places like speedrun.com, the rules are established by the moderators, and oftentimes with the feedback of the active runners. And that tends to lead to a bias in the rules towards improving the experience, primarily for the runners and to a lesser extent for the viewers, since a lot of speedrunning is also live streamed content, which can leave a bit of a gap in understanding for people who are not already part of the community, people who are outsiders. And it can also result in a lot of variability from community to community, which can make things seem fairly unintuitive. It can make the hobby seem a little opaque if you're trying to, run a specific game as an outsider, especially if you don't already have experience with a variety of other communities. And it can lead to things that seem pretty arbitrary if you don't have a very detailed understanding of the community or the game and its history, including things like what you're describing, Tyler, where, even fairly specialized software is written and made necessary in order to play these games competitively. That feels like it might be, if you don't understand the detailed justifications for why these things came about, it can feel like it's arbitrary, or that you're not really playing the game itself, that you're playing something that has been contrived over time by the community more so than the original developers.
Bingo.
Now, there is something to be said, for having placing some consideration with the experience of runners and viewers, but part of our intention with developing our opinionated set of rules is to make things more to reduce some of these negative experiences that you have as an outsider.
Yeah,
and make things more cohesive.
That's what I would like to see. And I know that's very personal to me, but I think everyone who's ever speedrun a game, especially on PC, has experienced some form of this where they just clash with their values. It's really a matter of values. Their values clash with the values of the other people running the game, and it's caused me to have to, to basically leave communities and give up almost like speedrunning entirely. I kind of switched to high score runs because the communities around that tend to be way more, I don't know, like, I just had more fun going after in-game, when the goal is maximizing some in-game score. There's kind of less wiggle room, like, because, for example, like, I'm gonna shut up really soon and let you talk more, but just defining where to start and end time has been a pain point for me, like, because there's certain runs where it's like where you start the time and end the time matters. And, like, if you find, like, a way to skip the final cutscene. It's like, well, we already ended time, so this time save doesn't even help. Like you're crushing innovation by ending time too early, potentially, and you're disincentivizing like skips or something like that. It's like I posted a video on my YouTube channel where I was theorizing a skip for Half-Life Source for the intro. The intro sequence is like, it's not, you know how Half-Life doesn't really have cutscenes. It just kind of
Mm-hmm.
has sections where you're kind of barred from progressing while the cutscene plays out. And there's a way to skip a lot of them. And I was theorizing that we could skip that first famous intro cutscene in Half-Life where you ride in the rail car on the monorail. And I posted that video, and then, but the thing is, they don't even start time till the end of that cutscene, even though the game is like, you have control of your character. So it's like, I kind of wasted my time even bothering to try to find it, and I really like, I was abusing like some glitches and going out of bounds. I was like trying really hard to find a skip. I can post this video in the comments or in the description here. Like I was trying really hard to. I've got like 80% of the way to being able to skip this cutscene, and it's just all for nothing because they don't even start time until after the cutscene because they don't want to watch the cutscene every time. That's it. They just do not feel. This is Half-Life Source, by the way, not Half-Life 1 speedrunners. I have no idea what they do. The runners just got tired of watching the opening cutscene, so they decided that you're allowed to start the run after it's already over. They just load the map that gets loaded after you watch the cutscene normally. So to me that's like a negative experience because it's like, A, it makes the run less legitimate because you don't start from new game, and B, all that time I spent having fun trying to figure out how to make the run faster is goes down the drain, and I'm missing out on like, because to me the fun part of speedrunning is mostly just routing. I find that way more fun than actually like finding glitches than actually grinding. So I'm kind of missing out on some of that fun because everyone just got so fed up with the cutscene that instead of trying to find a skip, they just they patched it out in the rule set, which to me is antithetical to the point of speedrunning. So in other words, I think if you don't like something about a game, changing the rules so that you no longer have to deal with it, to me, is antithetical. Like I said, that goes against the spirit of the sport. To me, the spirit of the sport is I'm going to optimize through gameplay, through glitches, through tricks, through my skill, or through luck, whatever, instead of patching the game or changing the rules so that I don't have to deal with hard or boring parts. I'm going to find a skip. Likewise, someone Zelpiku Kirby, I don't know if you guys know this YouTuber, but he recently posted a video on how to skip the it was like a skip for the first cutscene in Sunshine. It's like TAS only right now, but there's nothing in theory, I don't think, stopping anyone from doing an RTA other than the fact that it's like really, really hard and you'd never be able to do it. But like, it just goes to show, like, when you allow the hacked save file that skips the cutscene, you're kind of deleting some of the gameplay, and you're now the skip is worthless, even though it probably wasn't going to be done by RTA runners anyway because it's too hard. But like, it is possible.
Yeah, if you watch enough, like, history of videos about speedruns or world records, like world record progressions, you'll almost invariably find games for which, at some point, like years into the history and years ago, the timing methodology has changed substantially, and that all of the times have to be recontextualized.
Yep.
Now, there's sometimes, if you read into discussions, fairly intuitive or rigorous reasons for these kinds of things. But also, there's lots of cases where, like what Tedder describes, things have been the rules have been changed not so much because it could go either way, but more so because as times changed, the community changed and what the community values changed, and with a greater focus on the experience for the runners or for the viewers, like not having to watch the same cutscene every time. There came a change in rules that wasn't strictly necessary, and that can often make the game and the rules feel more arbitrary overall.
You know, I want to emphasize that, like, I'm not saying that any time the rules are changed, something like this, it's bad. I'm just saying that it reflects a set of values that can clash with some of the values of the people trying to A, run the game, and B, watch the game. For me, speedrunning is like, it's the value of speedrunning is that, like, you take the stock game and you don't touch it, and you play it in a way that anybody could learn to do, a normal player could do if they had the skill and the time. Not like, I beat this game really fast because I installed a mod to do it. Like, I beat this game really fast because I put in the work and the time to do it. And I think for speedrun viewers, like, it is really hard to convince a group of runners sometimes, depends on the group, of the value of maintaining that, like, stockness of the game. Sometimes they don't see it because they're kind of only focused, or primarily focused, on their own kind of experience. And that's fine if everybody agrees. But I think you lose something sometimes when you make a concession. There's always a trade-off. It's just hard to it's just very abstract, the thing that you lose when you agree to use a patch that lets you skip the cutscenes. Or, I mean, I've seen various examples of people who were literally deleting cutscenes from the game files so they didn't have to watch them in, like, multi-hour long. Like, I get it. Like, the run is like 5 hours long. It was an Assassin's Creed game. I forget which one. But, like, people were getting so fed up with the cutscenes that they've just deleted them. Like, they just go into their game folder and just right-click delete file. And I think someone might say, like, yeah, what's wrong with that if everyone agrees that it's okay? But I think you also lose something, which is that, like, the point of speedrunning, to me, is that, like, anybody could achieve this without any tinkering. This is just, I put in the work, or I grinded until I got the right RNG, or, like, when I pull up a speedrun record VOD or something, and then I say, like maybe for a game I've never even seen before, and I go, like, wow, that's, like, I'm watching the Rixer video on, like, the world record breakdown on, like, Resident Evil, and then he casually mentions at the start, like, oh, by the way, we use a mod here to guarantee this spawn, so you don't have to waste time grinding for it. Like, I instantly lose all interest. Like, that's how bad it is for me. And I think there's a lot of little decisions that you make that people don't understand how much it affects the actual run. Like, even just deciding to use load lists. Okay, well, what's defined as a load? I had to retime every run on the Harry Potter leaderboards with not just me. We got like 3 people to do it. We wrote software to parse the video file because we used to consider cutscenes, like, we used to not include the cutscenes. Which you skip the cutscenes, but, like, there's a little skipping cutscene screen, and we didn't include that in time because it's not like, because it's just you're just watching a timer go up, and we didn't really we didn't count that separately from a loading screen. But it turns out that while cutscenes are, like, skipping, even though there's like a skipping cutscene screen covering your screen, the game is actually still running. It's literally just speeding up the cutscene. So we changed the rules in Harry Potter 2 on PC to make it so that, like, okay, that is actually included in your time now. And people have to learn, like, slightly different strats to accommodate that. And then you get, like, Half-Life 2 where they don't count loading screens. And because of that, the run actually gets longer because save loading repeatedly can be used to fly through out of bounds in certain glitch setups. So what you get is like staring at a loading screen for a minute where your timer's paused, but you're like repeatedly spamming save loads, and it's like the run is actually longer than it would have been if you just went by RTA. So are you still speeding the game fast? Like, I don't know. Like, it's an open question. I'm not saying there's one answer or one right way to do it, but I think, and I also want to say before I maybe open it up to get some more opinions from you guys again, which is like I'm not committed to. I don't think we don't have to commit to one way of doing things. Like, I'm open to having like a little toggle on the website where it's like, this category is done this way, and then here's an alternate category that where like the only difference is like loadless versus RTA. Like, and that's just an example. Like, for a lot of these things, we can maybe decide that we want to accommodate more than one way of doing things. That's totally an option. I think how we want to do this kind of thing is going to affect how we build the site, because we're going to want to build the website with the technical capability to allow for these kind of switch like toggles or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that sounds really, really, really good. Like, I think the beauty, like, we already have, this is already a hobby where people are, deciding, I want to do it slightly different. I want to do it like this, like that, and being able to, like, handle that in a way that makes it really easy for users to then compare things in different runs. And it's like, I think there's a lot of value. I think that one, I think it's great. Um, That's obviously after MVP. And we are definitely working towards like all of the extras as well that, we're all excited about. So I get really excited when someone new comes in and says something and they're like, "Oh my God, like wouldn't it be cool, blah 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 blah." And then several people pop their heads up and they're like, "Oh, actually that's actually a banger of an idea." And so being able to hold those things and still be able to like look for the future of what we're doing here, and knowing that a product is like, we'll have it up by that point and then it'll have like a living energy in itself. It's I'll stop babbling.
No, I love to hear what you're saying.
um but yeah, no, anything that we can do to facilitate um these different choices, I think will make everything that much more to adopt, if that makes sense. And it's neat that we're thinking about those things ahead of time instead of trying to build the feature after the fact.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, Tedder, but I recall one of the, I think, pretty significant proposals for a feature which could be supported by the backend would be that on the front end you could actually have, as a user, a lot more power in filtering through boards and through submissions in a way that would almost let you, as a user, have a little bit of control on how you want to categorize and rank runs. For example, being able to change your filters so that runs are sorted by RTA, real time versus loadless time, or making considerations for other kinds of metadata about a run.
That would be great. Yeah, we did talk about exactly that. We basically said like we want to build a data model where you've got all these kind of metadata applied to every single run, and ideally they're consistent across the entire website as much as possible, so that as a user you could just, we definitely had this discussion. We were like, what if you could just apply a global filter, so it's like you by default see every game ranked by like you said, like loadless. Let's say you don't like loadless. Let's say you just want by default every game to be ranked by RTA that you pull up to view, because that's just what you care about. it'd be great if we can make that happen. It's not on the horizon at the moment, but it is something that we have written down as a goal, actually. So I yeah, I'd love to support something like that, and I'm continually keeping that in mind when I work on the data model and the backend API. As I'm keeping all these things in my head, and there is a document where we kind of have like future considerations. I think it's like a Figma or something.
Which is also a thing that I'm going to add to the resources after this.
Please do, yeah. If it's not already there.
I really just need to go back and collect a whole bunch of the resources and information and put them all in one place.
I can help.
Luckily, we still have, yeah, all of the stuff for that. But we can get a document together. That is one of the goals that we have from this meeting, is to figure out onboarding and resources and stuff so that when we do have an influx, we can capture that now that we have everything pretty penciled in, like we have a really, really good idea about where we're trying to go. And so now at this point, it's just like, okay, we just need people to, like, we're going to get there. Another snap of energy and attention on this thing, um, in the right channels and picking up the right tickets. And we're like MVP, y'all. Like it feels close to me. I don't know. Um
No, we're definitely coming up on the point where we can start getting beta testers, for lack of a better word. As in terms of functionality, there's only I think a couple things left to kind of. I mean, I say that, but you never know the kind of problems. I think right now we're working on getting the runs displayed, and that's a little bit tricky because we support multiple kinds of runs, like high score runs and also speed runs. They kind of have to have their own display formatting, so
mhm.
that's what we're working on right now. I don't know when that's going to be done. Probably, hopefully, like within a week or two. Uh, but after that, I don't think there's too much to do. Like we have the admin tools pretty much done. I think. Like people can create leaderboards and categories and edit. And I don't know if they can like reject or approve runs yet, but that would be that's something that I have to check. But I think we're pretty much getting to a point where we can start like actually getting people to use the website for testing purposes and being like, okay, what works, what doesn't, what's easy, what's hard, what's
We
missing.
need to set up a feedback
Yeah.
uh capturing before we let people, and we do have interest. People, even recently have been like, hey, when does testing start? Hey.
Yeah.
So definitely want to have some sort of collection process for feedback, like
I'll can help. I
I
can help set that up. Yeah.
cool,
Or
because like Subnautica turned that into an absolute like success, like people being able to be like, hey, this is a really easily accessible form that I can, say stuff to.
yeah, we'll definitely talk about like how we want to garner the feedback. And I was watching some interesting YouTube videos about like how to build good software based on user feedback. I can share those. I think I did share at least one of them in the chat.
Cool.
And it's interesting. I think to summarize, the guy said like don't just collect feedback. You have to sit down and watch the user use your website in real time, and basically see what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right, like what's cumbersome, like what are they wasting like seconds doing that could be like easy, like oh this button should be moved to like the top of the page instead of the bottom of the page because they keep having to scroll to find it or something, like little things that they are not going to tell you, but you'll
Could
notice.
we have a way to screen record that they opt into?
I'm sure we could. But that's why the work we're doing right now is important because it's like we need to tell them what the website's for so they know going in
Yeah,
what
yeah,
they're even doing. Because we've had a lot of people come in and be like, "Hey, can we do this?" Like, no, just knowing nothing about the project, which is great. I love when people just come in and ask for stuff. It's that's what we need. But they like sometimes they don't quite understand what we're building because we haven't like laid it out properly or whatever. Because and they're just like, "Hey, is it going to support this?" And we're like, "Oh, that's not like quite what this is," or like, or sometimes we're like, "Yes, but it's not going to work the way you think," just because of like, or sometimes I'm like, we haven't even talked about that yet. So I think for me, what I'd like to walk away knowing is like more clearly what the balance we want to strike is between this is how we're going to do things and we're going to architect it so that that choice isn't forced on you. Because I think the value of like I can envision doing it in a way where we make basically no choices for the user on how they want to interact with the site and it's all just toggles and switches. But I don't.
because if they're not still here, then they might not still be recording.
Oh, what's up?
I can hear you now, Tedder.
Oh, did you have a problem?
Yeah, you cut out for a minute or two,
That's
or
not good.
well, like 30 seconds.
That's just my internet. With all the snow lately. It's been affecting my internet. Okay,
Hmm.
so just to I guess to reiterate, we got to strike a
Just
balance, right, between prescriptivism, where it's like we're intentionally making this decision because it leaving it open kind of leads to clashing values versus like we're not going to make this decision so that users can kind of make it on the front end like we talked about where they can choose how they want to interact, and that's like we need to find a balance between those two things, and it's probably going to have to be done on like a case by case basis where we weigh the benefits of doing things one unified way versus being more flexible.
isn't that what like a release is for? And then people can go off that and like basically pull the project when it was still functional so that they can like branch it the other direction.
Yes, but also I'm more talking about like things that maybe don't even affect entirely how we build the site, but more like just the rules that we make. Like for example, the example we've been using is like we could decide not to prescribe RTA versus loadless and just say you pick when you're using the site which one you want to pay attention to. But we could also say, hey, this entire site is going to use loadless, and to me there is a trade-off in every single decision you make like that versus where if you make too many decisions up front and you're too strict about it, then you lose people who'd want to play in a different way. But if you're too loose, then it kind of you lose your identity and it kind of devalues the runs because what happens is you get like let's here's an example this is like the most controversial one I could think of, but like emulators, people are completely split in the speedrunning community about like whether it's cheating or not to play on BizHawk versus an NES for like Super Mario Brothers, and
Hmm.
any given game is going to have its own specific rules. So we could just take a hard stance and be like, it's banned, or we could be like, you have to tag your run properly so that people viewing it can filter however they want to filter it. But if you opt for that, then it can kind of devalue the runs that are done on the real hardware in some people's opinion because they're right up there next to the ones that are just done on like a keyboard with some emulator software that arguably is way easier to deal with than the actual finicky 1980s hardware and an uncomfortable controller.
talking.
So,
There we go.
yeah. So yeah, my question is like, not a question, but just want to get some more feedback from you two about like which way are we leaning in general for stuff like that, where it's like we could just have this be a switch, like a tag. I want to say tag on any given run where you tag it as like not on real hardware, and then people can just filter them out if they don't care about those runs. Um, but like in my opinion, that kind of having them side by side on the same board, there was it to me it kind of I think there is value to saying no, you got to play the game on the hardware it's released for, but there's also value. There's a different value in saying because it makes it more prestigious when you actually play the game on the real hardware, but you also shut people out who maybe don't have an NES or a capture card if you don't allow emulator runs. So like there's a trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
So where like and for each individual thing we're gonna have to have a long discussion, and I don't know if that's gonna be, and we're gonna offload some of that to the staff, ideally. But I think it would be really great to be able to like hand them this kind of set of guidelines where we like, okay, we're go like if you guys can't decide on something, this is the way this is like the default stance, in other words, or like these are the principles you want to uphold. Like if you care more about like prestige and competitiveness, you'd probably ban emulators. If you care more about like inclusivity and bringing people into the game, then you'd probably like allow them, but you have to tag it as emulator runs. People can hide them if they don't want to see them. This is just an example. I don't, you could think of probably 50 other aspects of speedrunning that work the exact same way.
Kind of like a con. I don't know if they're in negative connotations on the word conservative, but a conservative user's guide. So like, you're absolutely welcome to set your own homeroom rules. But we've thought through it, and in the thinking jungle gym that we went through, we thought about the X, Y, and Z, and that's why we made these decisions. And so it's just like if you are going to go in and change things, like more power to you. Absolutely. Like we don't want to police how you feel about things. But this is what it could lead to. This is why we made the basic decision that we did, so that the default is this.
Auride, yeah, what do you think about this, Auride?
Essentially, the way I see it is if we can come up with a good justification, or rather, if we believe in a good justification for generalized rules or meta rules on a given topic, then we will likely wind up adopting those rules at the site level. And if we can't decide, then we will try to put that power in the hands of the viewer of the board.
Yes.
Rather than letting those decisions be made unilaterally by, say, individual game moderators.
You just summed it up better than I could have, I think. They power...
I like that. I like that a lot.
Excellent, man. And I think the reason and our justification for doing things that way is that so that is A, you can always just out of the box have your own speedrun website available to you to create if you don't like anything that we're doing, because there's going to be a lot of people who are like, this isn't really for me. I want to do things a little bit differently. That's great. We support you. Here's our tool set ready for you to use for free and modify. And like B, we want to like we've already made some decisions, I think, that we haven't, like, they're not set in stone, but I seem to remember, like, we talked about, like, proof standards a while ago.
It was set in the U-Track. Yeah, I remember that.
Yes.
And I think our decision at the time, which we can still go back on, was, like, it's going to be almost entirely up to the user what they consider viewing as a legitimate run in terms of proof. Like, if the user doesn't care about, like, hand cam, they just think, okay, everyone with a video of their run is a legitimate run, then they can filter it that way. And that was our kind of stance at the time. We might change it. In fact, I think we even made the decision with the idea that this decision is a temporary one, and it's kind of reflects where we're at right now, and it may change in the future. But the way that we build the site is going to be influenced by that kind of thing. And I think I like what Auride just said, which is just like, we're either going to make a global or widely used or like conditional rule where it's like, if the game falls into this category of games, it works this way. Like, there could be like triggers, like, okay, like if it's a roguelike, here's our set of like guidelines for roguelikes. If it's like a linear story game, here's our guidelines for those. Like, we could do that too. Because there's different types of games, and we are going to have to specialize the rules a little bit to the different games that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Something I didn't really mention up until this point, but so it's not that I don't want to have any specializations, and it's not that I want a global rule set. It's more that I think we would benefit from. I like the term like meta rules, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
and I think additionally more specialized rules that have like conditions that trigger them. For lack of a better term, like a Yu-Gi-Oh card, where it's like, if the game fits this archetype, then you treat it. Then this is how you treat it, because treating every game the same just wouldn't work. They're too different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think there is justification for, and oh yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to say. Like, when you say like, as long as we feel justified in making that kind of unilateral decision on any one thing, it's always going to be subjective up to a point. There always gets to a point where it's like, there's no right answer. But if from the outset we go like, okay, these are the values of this website, like we in order, like first and foremost care about this, and then we consider this. If there's nothing, for example, let's say like we first and foremost care about like competition, but all things being equal, we also care about runner, like quality of life is the term I like to use. And then that being equal, we care about like ease of moderation. And then that being equal, we care about like rules that make the game better to watch for viewers, So it's like, I think establishing that kind of hierarchy early on will really free us up to actually come up with those justifications for the widespread rules that we come up with, and for the ones that and it'll let us figure out which,
it builds a framework of our values so that we can look back at it and also point people to it. It's like the big, acrostic that you put on the wall.
Yeah.
Where it's just, that thing. And yeah, I think that if we can pin that down, we can start figuring out what the hierarchy of our values is. We need to do that. I'm going to go back and make a transcript of all of this. And so this is my little note to myself here. Ding.
Yeah. And I can definitely get one of us to write down like the kind of takeaways from this that we can post in the
That would be freaking fantastic, because I am very scatterbrained, but I have heart.
No, it's hard to hold all this stuff in your head, and I think we're coming up on an hour, so I'm probably going to suggest starting to wrap this up if that's okay with everyone. But I think
that's
we
cool.
have, yeah.
I think this is a good starting point. I think we need to have more of these. And I think that we need to also build a way for us to put these up somewhere.
For sure.
That's another actionable item.
For sure. Yeah. And also a description of like, I've said this so many times, like what the website is. to some for
Yeah.
that's understandable by someone who doesn't even know really what competitive gaming is.
I
Or
think updating the info board that we have right now, I think is definitely something that we can do and that has value.
yeah,
And have all these things. These things can be pages, these things can be blurbs on pages.
all
And
right.
the fact that it'll update, if anybody has watchers, will be like, oh, hey, cool. All right. Thanks for showing up, y'all.
Thank you.
Anything you Auride, that you want to add before we theoretically wind down here?
If you are viewing this video near to the time it's published, relatively, or even any time in the future when leaderboards.gg is still in development, feel free to inquire at our Discord about joining the steering committee. I'm not guaranteed that anyone who asks will be added to the steering committee, but given the criteria we laid out at the beginning of the video about non-technical users with a background in leaderboard management, if you have a perspective to share, then you might actually be able to have your voice heard substantially for this project.
Additional to-do item being to make call to actions a thing that we have on our info site for people that want to help out and reach out, which could definitely funnel them into the onboarding stuff that we also make after this.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm gonna say goodbye for now, and after this, we're gonna meet and kind of work on writing some of this up and running it by the other members who couldn't be here. I think it would probably be good to make a YouTube channel for posting these. So I'll get in touch with you guys about that. I'm not gonna go ahead and with that until we're all on the same page. But yeah, that's all that I had. Thank you guys so much for being here, and goodbye. See you guys next time.
Thank you. Have a nice one.
You too.